give me your elevator pitch for these guys, for each word scroll. Like, what's good, what's bad, do you like it? So, alright. Eidolon of Mathlan, Aspect of the Storm. Mephisto, thumbs up, thumbs down. Give me your elevator pitch for this guy.
I like Storm. I think he's got a very specific role. I think there's other units I would take that do very similar. I would lean towards the other aspect every single other time, though.
Sam, how do you feel about Aspect of the Storm?
I guess my very short response is I would choose the Aspect of the Sea probably every time over him. He's exceptional in melee. I mean, I can't deny that. But I just don't think he's quite as versatile.
Yeah, I have to agree. His attacks are extremely consistent. He's hitting on 2s and 3s while also re-rolling 1s. And he's hitting on, or he's wounding on 2s and 3s and also re-rolling 1s. And he has Rend 2, so this guy, like, is one of the most consistent War Scrolls as far as guaranteed damage is concerned. That being said, if I'm thinking about taking Aspect of the Storm for 400 points, I'm going to take the Leviathan instead and save a few points, because it's a pretty similar job in your army, and he has more utility. Special shout out to Aspect of the Storm holding on to a Cloak of Midnight, though. I like that combo. I think being able to vanish immune stuff with this guy is the secret way to play him to his fullest. And also, like, okay, you're gonna want to play with this model, because it's one of their main, just completely awesome looking models. And there's a different version you can play with the same model, and like Sam said, if the goal is you want to play an Eidolon, I'm taking Aspect of the Sea. Speaking of, how do you feel about Aspect of the Sea, Sam?
I think it's probably one of my favorite units out of the entire Idoneth Deepkin list. What is it? I mean, what doesn't this guy do? He's a ranged attack. He's decent in melee, although, as you guys saw, you don't want to charge him. And he casts and unbinds 2 spells a turn. He gets 2 special spells. He adds 3 to the bravery of nearby units, which is huge. I've never seen an increase like that big before. And he can heal himself or re-roll a casting roll. And like I think I mentioned, his 2 spells are sweet, are like really, really, really good. Big thumbs up.
And he looks like a monster but isn't, so his save is a 2-up when he's in cover.
But most importantly, he can ride the tide. And by tide, I mean tornado.
Yeah. And by tornado, you mean the Balewind Vortex. The thing that is currently legal to play with still, because it is April 2018, but this video might become dated later. We'll see.
Yeah, let's see. You just fix it in post. Go back and edit it.
Do you have anything to add, or is your opinion pretty...
That's it. That being said, I do think 440 is... I like him. If I'm going to play with one of the aspects, I'm going to lean this way. Sam nailed every reason why I would play with him. Still, I stare at him and I go, okay, or I can buy 2 wizards for 200 points, but that's maybe because I'm cheap. Still, he's pretty resilient if you're not charging him into melee combat with, 20 GG. He's like he can stay back. He's got the army to protect him in 2 different ways between the nightmares they're giving everybody that they forget rapidly, and a giant Tuttle. So I dig him. I really do.
Yeah. Voltarnos, this guy is 280 points, which is a fucking bargain for what he gives you. Even if he's not your commander, he's great and gives tons of AoE buffs to everyone in your army in various different ways. 18 inches around him, he gives a bravery buff. You can reroll hit rolls of 1 for Akellians within 18 inches of him. His command ability is only once per game and only on the big turn, but oh boy, is it great. Like, on that turn, plus one of the attack's characteristics of every melee weapon used by up to 3 different units. That's crazy. When he charges into people, he does mortal wounds on a 2-up. He has this neat alternative mortal wound kind of -5 rend thing proc on his weapon. His weapons are good. And best of all, he's got a 3-up ignore spell effect save, which is excellent. 14 move is great, and his save's a 3-up, and he's not a monster, so it can be a 2-up and cover. This guy's awesome. If you're talking about, like, cost, efficiency and, like, cost to what you get, this guy is a home run.
I think I've changed his name to Value to Nos.
Yeah.
He's practically an auto-include in any list, whether you're running him as a general or not. Like, he's going to give you... I can't find a way to spend the points better.
Especially now with 160-point eels that are only good on the charge. If he's not charging, he's great. If he is charging, he's great. +1. Okay. Let's see. Kellian King. He's the downgraded version of Voltar for cheaper. Maybe I'll take this guy if I'm trying to get a command trait to qualify for an Enclave, or if I need 40 points, but I think Voltar is generally the way to go. Tidecaster we talked about, this guy's amazing. His Riptide spell is just like way better than Tide of Fear as the lore spell. So you get to choose one of the fun ones. And if he's your general, you have the option of switching the tides, which is awesome. And the first wound allocated to him is negated. How sick is that? This guy's a home run for 100 points. Akellian Alopexes, aka the Sharks. What do you think, Sam?
They're big disappointment. I guess I expected more. I just don't. I don't think their profiles. Nothing leaps out at me as very good, and their special ability I don't think is very good either. I think they really dropped the ball on having guys riding around on sharks.
Yeah. Yeah, they just have a million different attacks, and one of them is good, but it only has 1 attack per model, which on 3s and 3s Rend 2 is still like slightly worse than it's like worse than a coin flip, whether or not it does damage. I don't know. They have a bunch of different attacks. They're not that great. Bloodthirsty Predators is bad. Yeah, dude, they got Dark Owls riding sharks. It should be more impressive than this. I'm sad.
Yeah, they're just gonna sad. Yeah, they're just gonna give them frickin' laser beams, could they?
Yeah. Why does the net launcher do 3 damage, and the harpoon do 1? Dude, a harpoon does more damage than a net. Anyone can tell you that. Come on. Unless it's a net made out of razor blades. I don't know what it is, but it seems like they got the names mixed up. Then again, I guess you're not shooting 3 nets, but still. Then there's Lotan. Speaking of disappointments, just like Sloppity Bilepiper and Horticulus Slimix, one of the most characterful, wonderful models, has rules so shitty that you feel bad for running him. Like, he doesn't do anything you want. He has a bunch of really bad attacks. He's not a wizard, he's not a priest, he doesn't have spells, he doesn't... His one ability, you can re-roll hit rolls of 1 for friendly Namarti around him, but a lot of other people get to do this as well. All the other 100-point guys are better than him. I'm sad.
I think it's apt that both the Sharks and Lotan appear on the same page, because you can just tear it out of your battle tome.
Yep. You know what? They're doing you a service. They're helping out. Well, okay, we felt bad 2 or 3 times in a row, but it's time to perk up, because we have the Akeley Levite on, the big turtle. How do we feel about this guy?
What a unit! Like, when they tease
That's
this army.
what she said.
Yeah. Oh,
you should just start over with your whole. I couldn't help it, but start over with your whole thing.
What a unit! When they tease this, you see a turtle and like a dude riding it with reins. Like, this it evokes the the old meme, "Ride me closer, I want to hit that with my sword," and it's the dude in the tank with the IG, right?
Yeah.
That immediately came to mind when I saw this turtle, and it met and exceeded my expectations. I expected it to be just obnoxiously costed, and it's actually quite reasonable for what you get, and it synergizes so well. Just at default, it synergizes with your army. It gives you that cover save, and there's little combos to kind of build it up. So it's just big win, big W.
Yeah, the model looks great. It is support, and it's a beast. It has 16 wounds and what, like a 3-up?
Yeah.
And its attacks are awesome, and you can randomly get bonus 6 mortal wounds. What's not to like about this thing? All under 400 points.
Yeah, and it flies, just like everything else. Like, that's so... Everything in this army flies almost, and that's really strong. And it's something a lot of people are glazing over. But, it's very rare for stuff to fly in this game. And almost everything flies in this army, and that's quite a bit more powerful than people might think at first blush. But yeah, this guy, this guy costs less than I thought he was going to. And it's the exact kind of unit I want. A centerpiece model that's supposed to stay in the middle of your force. It has defensive powers. It has offensive powers. Your guys want to stay close to it. It does it all. It's great. It's probably not worth taking 2, but I don't consider that a downside. Morsar Guard, these are the attack eels. When they're not on the charge, I don't think they're very good. And when they're on the charge, I think they are good. And so I don't like them. Because you can't just assume you're going to be in the great position of getting the charge. A lot of times your opponent charges you. A lot of times you're stuck in combat from before. You just, if something isn't very good, unless it gets the charge, I tend not to like it. I like something that's good already, and then is better on the charge. And they're more expensive than the defensive ones, and the defensive ones do their job much better. And I don't think Biovoltaic Blast is that great.
I agree with you. I think that just the defense eels just do all of the same stuff. They practically have the same attack profile and everything. They have slightly lower reach. I think that's about it.
But one extra attack. 3
just,
instead of 2.
it's not like they fly. It's not like you're gonna struggle to really get into reach with 3 eels, you know, that fly. So I don't know that this was an oversight, because I think they just overvalue the charge ability, and I would rather have the defensive ability for what you want to do with basically all these armies anyway.
Yeah. These guys are sort of like, how do I want to say this? Not indicative, that's wrong. These guys play into the idea that the Idoneth Deepkin kind of turn your ideas of how to play and build around the game upside down. In that, here's an army where your elite troops are your screens. Like, Akelin Echelon Guard, these guys are elite cavalry. But you're supposed to screen with them, not with the battle line. You know, you want these guys out front absorbing hits with their immunity to rend, with Biovoltaic Barrier. And then either they die or they retreat so that you get to countercharge with your chop 'em up units, which happen to be your battle line for the most part. So it's opposite day. Speaking of, Namarti Thralls. Chop 'em up. These guys have, High Elf Swordmaster attacks with rend, and Sweeping Blows gives them special abilities against all sorts of different units. Sure, they only have a 5-up save, but that's why you screen for them. And the whole army is kind of set up so that you, keep them safe for the most part. And I think early on, people are going to run a lot of Thralls and run them out front, and I think that's totally the opposite of what you should be doing.
Yeah, they have a better save than my skeletons, for 3 reasons. I mean, there's a giant turtle, you have your tides, and and they start out with a better save. Also, they regen like my skeletons without having to do like hoops with graveyards, which I consider it a benefit. Honestly, I have graveyards I can put wherever I want, but they regen too. Consistent numbers of regen too, if you do it right. So
yeah, if you go Morphan, yeah.
Yeah, it's like they're. I hesitate to say the best battle line in the game, but I will say one of the best battle lines in the game.
Yeah, the thing that stops them from being the thing that stops them from being among the best battle line in the game is something that you couldn't possibly know from just looking at the War Scroll. They don't come on 25mm bases, like Skeletons do, like Sisters do, like Witch Elves do, etc. They come on 32s.
Ooh, okay.
So the bases are big, so you can't quite fit as many as you think you can around enemy units. And this is a downside to these guys.
It leans towards how they feel elite, I think.
It doesn't kill it for me. I think they're still great. They're just like not, among the best in the game, but I don't think that's a bar that you have to that you have to cross. And when you have guys that look this awesome and their stats are great, good enough to kind of build your army's theme and strategy around, I'm pleased. This makes up for the Sharks, but it doesn't make up for the Sharks and Lotan.
So speaking of making up for the Sharks and Lotan, the Reavers are next?
The Reavers are next. The army really did want ranged. Probably not ranged as bad as this, but it's something. If you really want ranged, they're not a terrible choice. At what they do, they're certainly not as good as Thralls. But dude, keep them behind a line of something else, so you have a whole bunch of shots with Stormfire. Even though it's 4s and 4s with no rend, like, you'll do some damage. They can move around. They can retreat and shoot in an ebb tide.
I like them. I'm a fan. I like that they get both versions of their weapon. They're not. I think they're like 20 points too expensive for what you get. I think.
Are they also 140 or the same cost?
Yeah, they're the same cost. Okay. And
they're
not battle line.
They're no Judicators, that's for damn sure. So taking like 1 unit of 10 Reavers instead of your 50th, Thrall that's not a bad choice.
Yeah, like I said, I like what you get. They're not the Swiss Army knife that Judicators are, where you can just throw them in any list and you're like, these guys work. But they do fit very well with their own army when you're doing sort of like when you know what the plan is.
Right.
Some people, I think people are like, oh man, I can build a full shooting army without it. That's not what these guys do. That's not what they're for. And if you're going into this unit, if you're going into Idoneth Deepkin and you're thinking you have a full ranged option, and you're just going to be like, enemy at the gates sniper wars, except no one can see you, like, it's not going to happen.
I mean, Judicators are 160, and they're way better. And people aren't running a million Judicators in their Stormcast list, so that's probably telling, Like, other armies with way better shooting options aren't spamming those, so you probably shouldn't be spamming your worst archers in this other army. I mean, I'm sure there's counterexamples to that, but in this case, I think it holds pretty true.
So the battalions are just bad across the board.
What?
So the battalions are just bad across the board.
I think they basically are. Yeah, I don't really like any of the battalions in Idoneth Deepkin. The Royal Council is probably the best one, because you want an Kellian King of some sort, you want a Tidecaster, and even though Soul Scryer I don't think is very good, like, you can find uses for him. And their Give Them No Respite ability is good. It's just, I don't think it's worth 140 points, and it's definitely not worth 240 if you weren't going to get a Soul Scryer already. A Kellian Core requires me to take units that I didn't want that are kind of expensive, and its ability isn't very good. So yeah, I'm not thrilled with that one. Namarti Core Battalion is a good idea. Well, you're already probably on Morphan, which adds 3 to a D3 as it is. Making those D3s into 3s automatically isn't worth 100 points or whatever. And furthermore, it makes you take Reavers, and I kind of don't want those anyway. Well, you could spend that 100 points on just another Soul Render, which gives you another 3 plus a D3. More regeneration than the Battalion does, and doesn't require you to, like, buy Reavers if you don't want, and gives you more bodies on the table. So it's not worth doing. And the Phalanx, one of the Mega Battalions, is a gross, completely unnecessary waste of space and ink and people's time. Alliance of Wood and Sea combines the worst parts of Sylvaneth with the worst parts of Idoneth Deepkin. Like, you lose all your Sylvaneth allegiance abilities, which is what makes Sylvaneth good. None of your stuff is particularly aggressive. You just have this big, dirtily, kind of defensive army that can't kill anything. And so that's bad. And that's it. That's all the battalions. So yeah, the battalions are super underwhelming. Are based on kind of good ideas and just completely, like, open the door and fall flat on their face, like the beginning of Big Lebowski. Like, it's awful. It's not like they're too terribly expensive, I guess, but it's certainly not like Nurgle, where some of them are really tempting. These are not tempting. So I made a meme. I created a meme for this game. Or rather, for one of my lists. The classic, you can rewrite DNA on the fly. You're using it to throw 9 sharks at people. With tech like that, you could cure cancer. But I don't want to cure cancer. I want to throw 9 sharks at people. Well, okay. It's hard to argue. I mean...
Oh, I see you just want sharks.
Look, the Tidecaster, as the general, he has an ability that's really quite good. If he's the general, this little Tidecaster, then turn 2 is the big damage turn, instead of turn 3. And I like that a lot better. Like, that sounds good to me. Turn 3 felt too far away. And it kind of soured me on the entire army. But turn 2 being the big combo turn, I can work with that. Like, that's okay. And so we have a Tidecaster to do that. He has Rune of the Surging Tide, which once per game gives the whole army +1 move, which you use on turn 2 to make sure you get into combat. Anyway, we're going Fuathan with this, because we want to throw 9 sharks at people. You can reroll hit rolls of 1 for units that are affected by the Flood Tide ability in the Tides of Death table. In addition, whenever a unit would be affected by the Ebb Tide, they are instead affected by the Flood Tide. So, what this means is, when you reverse the order with your Tidecaster, who's your general, on that turn you're rerolling hit rolls of 1 for all your guys. In the off chance that you get into combat on turn 1, you have this combat buff, which is kind of nice. And then on turn 2, it's go time. Furthermore, in the combat phase, reroll wound rolls of 1 for Fuathan mounts. And this is actually pretty important. The sharks are mounts, as far as I can figure, because there's guys riding them. You know, comment below if you disagree. But I'd like to reroll 1s for the sharks' awesome attacks that they don't get many of. So it really ups the damage for them. I guess I'll talk my way through it since I'm rebuilding the army list as we speak. And then we're using 2 Soul Scryers. These are the guys that I keep saying are bad, and so I guess I need to explain myself a little bit. 6 move, 5 wounds, bad attacks, a bunch of extremely bad ranged attacks. Doesn't cast spells, is a priest but doesn't have any prayers, and has a setup ability that can take units along with him, but then they have to be wholly within a board edge, which for me makes it like not worth taking. And so, okay, I've said everything wrong with it, which is almost everything. However, it's got Seeker of Souls. At the start of your charge phase, you can pick one enemy unit within 24 inches of this model. If you do, you must add 3 to charge rolls for friendly Idoneth Deepkin units that are within 12 of that unit. So this is making sure we absolutely get the charge with all these sharks, because we need to get our sharks into combat on turn 2. That's the goal. Earlier versions of this list ran with a battalion, and that battalion was the Royal Council, because I wanted a Tidecaster anyway, and I wanted a Soul Scryer anyway. And an Kellian King is actually a pretty good model, and I was thinking about playing with it. And the Give Them No Respite ability lets you add 3 inches to the move characteristic of 3 different friendly Deepkin units, and I have 3 units of sharks, so I'm like, oh cool, this will be perfect, you know. But I figured by the time it becomes turn 2, you can definitely be in combat and or get the charge anyway without the Royal Council. And 140 points for the battalion plus 280 points for a Volthos, or, you know, 240 for a Kellian King. I'd rather just play more sharks. With tech like this, you could make a really competitive list, but I don't want to make a really competitive list. I want to throw 9 sharks at people. And so that's what we went with. And furthermore, I wasn't feeling any of the artifacts. And it's not like you can get it down to 1 drop anyway. So it's not a real Alpha Strike list, because it's not like a 1 drop army. And so you might as well lean into that. 2 Soul Scryers, so that you get +3 to charges, so that you make sure you get into combat. Your 3 minimum Thralls to satisfy battle line requirements, and then 9 sharks. And all the sharks attack first, and then it's their turn, and they're still in combat, and they simply have to retreat, because otherwise all the sharks will eat them. It's perfect. It's a foolproof plan, there's no way it can go wrong, and if it does go wrong, you don't care, because you definitely know that going in. If you're Mr. I'm throwing 9 sharks at people, then you are okay with the plan not working 100%.
Well,
you're just there for it when it does.
You're either going to win fast or lose fast, and you know what? That's an okay way to play Age of Sigmar. I think.
You're either going to win sharks or you're going to lose sharks.
You know, some sharks you win, some sharks you lose.
Yeah.
A shark on the charge is worth 2 in the Aether.
Right. A shark in the hand is worth 2 in the shark. It's one of those where just every word in the phrase starts becoming shark.
Yeah, sometimes sharks, you know, it's just, it can't be avoided.
This army is sort of built to, like, illustrate a way that you can play Idoneth Deepkin. I mean, obviously we're being silly by adding 9 sharks, but, you know, that's 1,200 points that you can, that's almost 1,300 points of just whatever else you can add. It doesn't have to be 9 sharks. Although I must say, medically speaking, if you're doing this and not using 9 sharks, you are doing it wrong. I made a pure good stuff list. Just like, alright, I'm going to try to take just the best things and try to make the most competitive list. We're Morphan Enclave, and so in this like pure good stuff list, you're like, okay, well the Tidecaster's the general, so if I want to, this can be a turn 2 combo army. And you give him Born from Agony, so he has 7 wounds. Rune of the Surging Tide, so once a game you can add +1 move for your entire army. And so you do that to make sure everybody gets their charges on turn 2. Voltar still gets most of his cool abilities when he's not the general, actually. So you have your Echelon Guard that are screening for your other units. And then you have a Leviathan with your 30 Thralls in kind of a horseshoe shape around it. Your Soul Scryer's in the middle. Voltar is nearby. And a Lore Master making your Leviathan considerably more powerful. And the Lore Master ally is actually pretty nice because you get to You know, he probably can't be sniped because the Leviathan is huge, and you just keep him right in the back, you know? Right in the back of him, so he's out of line of sight of people. And yeah, this is... If I had to, like, go to a tournament, this is probably the list that I would run. The next list was Monster Mash. If you want to play Idoneth Deepkin as a Monster Mash army, well, here you go. I made a list. It's got Eidolon of Mathlan, Aspect of the Sea. This is the Spellcaster one. He doesn't have the Behemoth. He's not a monster, and so he can stand on a Balewind Vortex, and so you're going to do that. Sands of Infinity, the once-a-game artifact that lets a spell last for an extra turn.
So you can do the ice thing, right?
So you
ice
do the D6, you know, target enemy units all get -1 to hit, and then that lasts for 2 turns, and so on your next turn you get to cast that again, and now their whole army is at like -2 to hit. And his Lore of the Deeps for his second spell is Tide of Fear, which does the same thing except only to 1 unit. So you're just massively debuffing your opponent's army from on top of a Balewind Vortex that's immune to melee, behind a bunch of other Idoneth Deepkin that's immune to being targeted by ranged. And so he's kind of immortal for a decent portion of the game on top of there. Voltanos, by the way, lets other Akellian units reroll 1s to hit. So just kind of moving around as 3 massive monsters crashing into everything, and the other army is debuffed enough so that they actually die to this. It's not the best, but it's fun.
I like this. I think it also illustrates why Balewind Vortex should be nerfed. I'm staring directly at my camera right now.
Here, I'll upload a reaction picture of my face when I read Balewind Vortex for the first time.
Oh, see, I thought that said erection cam.
Thoughts as a whole about Deepkin. How did you feel leading up to the release when you first saw them? How did you feel when you first saw some of their stuff? And then after a deep dive into their things and some lists, how do you feel about it? We'll go... Whoever has a more complete thought can go first.
I was very intrigued leading up to the release. A lot of like the tidbits and teasers they gave really had me going. And I thought... I thought and ended up being disappointed that there weren't more like sea creatures, I guess. And the ones that they did have, and obviously Lotan, are kind of disappointing. Like the sharks and Lotan are pretty disappointing. I thought they'd have something like hammerhead sharks doing something, or like a giant octopus or something like that. But you know, the Eidolons and everything are awesome. The Turtle is awesome. The Marty are awesome. All their great looking models are awesome, and that I'm really glad to see that. I'm a little bit unsure of their play style exactly, so I can't really. Yeah, I get they're sort of mysterious in that respect still to me.
So, like other people. My journey was weird because I really thought that they were a April Fool's joke at first.
Fishman.
I really thought,
yeah.
Like we're talking like Half-Life 3's coming out. Don't believe it. Mm-hmm. Levels of skepticism. But as they started to tease models and reliable sources were like, no, this is legit. I was like, okay, they look good. This isn't my bag. I'm not the sea elf guy, but they're doing a really good job. If ever something having to do with like sea elves were to get my attention, like, hey, here it is. And then I went on an interesting journey of ambivalence to disarming other people's. They're going to be so OP with a couple of rules we saw teased, to thinking they kind of sucked, to being like a little excited.
Resoundingly a little excited.
Resoundingly a little excited, yeah. I mean, every battle report coming out from even experienced players, they're just getting hammered, you know?
Yeah, well, dude, it's a pile of weird rules, tons of moving parts, and inversions of what you normally do that aren't obvious right away. I think people should not judge them based on the 2 Warhammer TV preview games that they have played with them, where they got tabled both times and didn't even come close to winning. Because having watched one of them and saw cliff notes on the other, the person playing Idoneth Deepkin each time was making decisions like so comically wrong that they would have lost that hard with just about any army. So, I mean, there is that. I wouldn't jump to conclusions there. I don't know, I might have said this last time or might have just thought about it and forgot, but I know they didn't plan on it being this way on purpose, but it could have been where they have this finesse, you know, counterintuitive, you're spinning a lot of plates at the same time kind of army, and the person who would like that, gameplay-wise, watches Warhammer TV, and they see a person making all the wrong decisions and getting crushed, and they're just, like, mad that this person is doing it wrong when they're clever enough to figure out how to do it right, and they, like, anger purchase the army to, like, show them how to do it right. Like, reverse psychology of marketing.
That's actually really funny.
Like, I could see that. I was feeling that way. Like, I was watching Warhammer TV, and Carrie was making, like, you know, she's a fine host, but she was making super boneheaded plays one after another.
Boneheaded?
Yeah. And I was, like, getting frustrated watching it. And I'm like, I'm gonna build this army, and I'll show them how to play this, you know. And so there was a little to that, maybe. And then also on Facebook groups and just, you know, repositories for large groups of players and new players and stuff, people seem to think that these guys are completely broken, like so overpowered. I find that bizarre, but in keeping with a lot of the opinions shared by you know, the masses, I guess, where they have these opinions that I can't really parse out. It doesn't make much sense to me. No, they're not overpowered. If anything, I think they're a little underpowered. When like a competitive player is looking through this battle tome, he's going to see the words "holy within" pop up a distressing amount of time, and it's going to scare him, I think. And it should, in a way. And so why is there so much holy within in this book? Is it because that's how things are going to be in the future? I don't think so. I think it's because they wanted the army to look on the table like schools of fish. They wanted the army to look beautiful. Kind of weird and kind of bad because of that, but it's worth it. And I think that would sum up the army in a way.
I do think you can be competitive, but I'd place this, if we're going to harken back to your podcast that may or may not have been filmed by now regarding the tier lists, I'd probably place them tier 2.5.
I would put them definitely the last 3 or 4 armies that have come out are all seemingly amazingly bad matchups for this army. So meta-wise, I don't think they're positioned very, very well. There's perfectly viable lists you can make out of this and play well and do well with. It's just there's a whole lot of traps you can fall into, and so the average IDK army is going to be god-awful. Just a mess. That's my prediction, not to be mean.
Yeah, the average army is going to be a mess, and I don't think it has answers to all of the problems.
Right. And if you just randomly pick stuff in a Fireslayer's army, you're fucking powerful. And if you randomly pick stuff in an IDK army, you are a pile of spaghetti. And it's not going to go well. So, yeah, I'd put IDK solidly tier 2 if you're doing it right. Because I think with tight play and a little luck, they can get top 10 or whatever.
Which is weird, because like I do place Nurgle and Daughters of Cain firmly in 1.
Yeah. Like, what they're doing isn't fundamentally bullshit, it's just great. Like, there's a difference, I think. Even though Stormcast tend to get close to as many top 8s or whatever as some of the S tier deck, or as some of the S tier lists do. That has to do more with Stormcast being the ultimate metagame utility army, where you can really, they have so many units that you can really adapt to whatever the metagame is like, and by far the most people play Stormcast. And so both of those things put together means about as many top 8s as the truly busted stuff. Oh, that's right, the viewer comment. Nazgub. He asked me on probably my first video, can you talk about Seraphon in the current meta? Is Croak still good? So speaking of Tier 1 and Seraphon, in my opinion, Seraphon is Tier 1. They're great. Because of their teleport ability, they can line up good matchups wherever they want. They have a lot of rock, paper, and scissor units, and then they get to fight the unfair fights by teleporting their guys towards the ones that they're going to beat. Their big downside is they have a linchpin in their entire army, and that's the Slan Starmaster. If he dies, the House of Cards falls apart. But you know it and your opponent knows it, so I guess don't have that happen. Croak is a little worse now that the metagame has progressed to where it is. It used to be the case that there wasn't a lot of ranged, necessarily, and people thought monsters were good and stuff. And so Croak on a Balewind Vortex literally was invincible, but now he's kind of not up there. Although, speaking of stuff that shits on IDK, Lord Croak on a Balewind Vortex, like, almost single-handedly kills an IDK army. Because he's not using ranged, he is casting spells and just raining mortal wounds down pretty much table-wide on any units he chooses, and so he's killing all of your buff guys from really far away, and you don't have any ranged at all to get him off there, so he's kind of invincible. And it's a big problem. And no, you're not going to get him off with Reavers. Like, he'll take like 2 or 3 damage and then heal it all back at the end of turn. So it's a problem. Seraphon is going to be a real problem for Deepkin, I feel. Just on paper, especially if they're playing Croak.
I think there's a problem with Deepkin in general right now as I look at the S tier. I don't think they have a favorable matchup against any of them. KO maybe. KO maybe, but Clown Car KO just like rolls up on the priority target and just he's already dead, stop shooting.
Yeah, I mean it forces KO to have to shoot the closest guy. And so they will. And then the closest guy will die, and then the next closest guy will die. And their Rocketeers with chainsaws for hands will leap with flying over your front units, charge in, and really mess everything up. I think KO is fine against Deepkin. They're naturally resistant to what KO is doing, but I don't think it's enough. Who knows? Maybe there'll be a silver bullet for KO. I'd have to see it, pan out on the table.
It's gotta play out. And that's where I'm saying, like, IDK, you gotta play those, requisite 5 games.
Yeah.
Get the feel of the handle in the army, and you might need another 5 more to really.
I mean, it's not a death sentence that IDK gets smashed by Zench and Fireslayers every time, because that's why they're S tier. They beat everyone. So
they get smashed by Daughters of Cain as well. I bet you Nurgle.
I think they do. Yeah.
I bet you Nurgle will literally and figuratively shit on them.
Yeah, with Rodicus's Reign of Filth, yes, he will literally shit on them. Yeah, I think Nurgle's a bad matchup as well.
I just a lot of these armies.
Legion of Lagash is also a bad matchup, I think, because you have no shooting. Your spells are great, and a bunch of buffed bone zones are a problem to deal with for Deepkin. Although all your guys can fly, so it's harder to tar pit you. You got that one thing.
I'm gonna tar pit their thralls and out regen them, even though they have some admirable regen. It's just gonna be 2 bone zones and 2 I don't know, thrall squalls, just fucking hanging out and just a swirl and a spiral in the middle while
that's a fine thrall squall. That's a good one. It's copyrighted.
Yeah, we're doing that trademark.
Yeah.
And so that's going to happen, but I think in the end, death wins the attrition.
Yeah, I think it's a better game than some of the other ones we've been talking about.
It's not as one-sided.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as one-sided.
I think Daughters of Cain are going to mostly just run over IDK, unless they get themselves into the worst position. Like, you know, they haven't really done anything, and now it's turn 2, and it's go time. It's the combo turn. Well, now you have a bunch of crazy ladies with like 5 up saves that are just going to get... Your entire army is going to attack first, and so they're all going to die. I think Deepkin against Ironjaws is the most depressing matchup, because Ironjaw's main best ability is Smashin' and Bashin', which is an ability that says if you wipe out a unit in the combat phase, you get to go again, instead of your opponent getting to go. And Deep can just automatically do that on turn 2 or 3, their choice, for their entire army. So the thing you have to bend over backwards and set up this combo and get lucky on, like, Deepkin are just doing that automatically on whatever turn they want.
Oh, so like they were thinking about reworking Ironjaws, right? And so the guys in like the draft room.
And they're like, well, now you know we'll leave them shitty, and then we'll just make an order army that does what they do, only better.
I heard Rupert was working on some new rules. Why don't you go see what Rupert had drafted up for the new rules for Aurochs? You know.
Yeah, he's like, well,
faction.
Ironjaws, like, their models are excellent looking. They don't look like the stupid orcs with the distended stomachs and the stupid butts, you know. They're huge and they're awesome. They're riding dragons and stuff. But the rules are just like, you know, everything only really works on 6s, and you gotta get really lucky, and you have to really outplay people, and you have, like, no shooting, and you don't have much magic, and you don't have much rend, and you don't have many mortal wounds. Like, it's just, your rules are kind of lagging behind. So why don't we give them a facelift? Alright, I did it. Here's the updated Ironjaws rules. Cool. We're going to make an awesome order army out of this. Get fucked.
Yeah, thanks, Rupert, for all your hard work.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah.
Just go ahead and yep. Oh, they're elves now. Enjoy. And then he just like goes home and like one of the.
It's like, aw.
This won't be in the live taping.
Don't worry, like Destruction player. We'll give you a Grot army that's brand new, so you can play little hooded snot creatures, and run 200 of them. Won't that be fun? No, stop. I mean, it's my own fault. I chose that Grand Alliance as my first one. I'm like, man, everything in Destruction is really dumb. Except, boy, do I like these Beast Claws. They look great. I should have made sure we're good. Well, so they were good. The rules for them were good. It's just I finished painting the army the day they nerfed them in 6 ways, and so now they're terrible. So
man, and your army looks so good. They look
meticulously painted, look great, and so now they look great on my shelf. We've been waiting for GHB to fix the problems for 1 year, and so, like, GHB 18 is the time for them to not undo the nerfs. That's not what we want, and I'm speaking for the Beast Claw community, I guess, here. Because I'm pretty popular on the internet.
I've heard.
When it comes to Beast Claw stuff, as far as like tournament reports and stuff, I have a thread called Just Play Better, which talks about my journey of learning how to get better in Age of Sigmar by playing games with Beast Claw and the things I learned, and trying to get good with this army that everyone says wasn't very good.
Yeah,
and finally came to the conclusion that no, like, this really is quite bad.
Yeah, links below. You know.
Right. But yeah, it's not that we just want the nerves undone. That's not the case. Now, like, if you play unnerfed Beast Claw in today's metagame, it gets crushed. It's just that people, like, weren't doing it as right as they are now. I mean, that's how things work. Like, people get better at playing the game as things go on. Like, back then, people thought that just monsters were so overpowered. And it seems silly, like, looking back on it, and you're just like, wow, you guys are so wrong about this game.
Well, yeah.
Bodies are good, man.
Yeah, bodies are good. It's important to have options. Bodies give you options.
When your theme is your entire army hits on 4s, and you don't have any command abilities, and you don't have any wizards, priests, spells, or synergy buffs, like,
you know,
you gotta have something. To the next podcast, but I could talk about everything they should fix with Beast Claw before GHB 18 comes out, so I can say.
I think you can solo rant that. Like,
Yeah,
you could,
that doesn't. I don't need to force you guys to listen to me. Like, you can click on my video and listen to that if you care to. I don't need, like, I don't have to like pull you into it and be standing there and be like, "Yep, oh yeah, it sounds like it sucks." Definitely not gonna post that, I guess, or maybe I will. Maybe it's funny. I don't know. But yeah, maybe that's the next show. The next show is Tiers, and I think Tiers is a good intro. And then when we talk about Tier 3, it's a good segue to talk about, like, okay, well, what can we do to improve these? I don't play Flesh Eater Courts, so I don't know what you can do to improve them. But I know that I beat the fuck out of them with my mixed order list, and it was so easy, and it shouldn't have been, because he was playing really well. He was playing well, he had a plan, and he followed through. I feel like he was playing Flesh Eater Courts at the maximum possible efficiency level. And his dudes just simply bounced off of my guys, and I countercharged them off the table. And that, like, if you're playing peak efficiency, it shouldn't be that easy to defeat you. And my mixed order list, while good, it has the tools to succeed. I think it's arguably not even tier 1.
I think you're migrating towards tier 1 though.
Yeah.
With
but definitely what I was playing at Adepticon was tier 2, like with the assassin goofiness. Yeah. Because I wanted 200 points to be 2 models so that I could finish painting it in time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cool combo, but let's be real.